Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Welcome to the wide world of wrestling. My name's Simon Tackler, and joining me is my co-host, Neil Walters. Neil, how's it going?
I'm in the box again.
We're
back in the box.
We're back in the box.
We can be found in boxes yet again. I think people may have thought we were dead because they were like, well, we haven't seen them in weeks, and now we're here again. It's a pleasure to be back.
We were just spirits. Just our voices could be heard and not seen. But here we are back with a video because it's a special edition of the show. We're not going to be talking about what happened in the wrestling world this week. Oh, no, we're going to step it up, and we're going to be ranking the greatest wrestlers of all time. And we're not going to be picking our own choices. We're not just going to be saying who's our favorite. We're going to use a list that we found online. Neil, you found this. I don't know where you found it because whoever put this together has strange taste, but I love it.
I've had a lot of time on my hands. It's been a little bit of a problem because I've had so much time that I've started looking into the world of Twitter and the world of dumb things that the internet talks about, and this was definitely the dumbest with this list. And some of the some of the choices of people, I was like, wow, that's incredible. And I think I sent a list to you, and then you were like, oh no, I sent it to our Facebook group, and then I think everyone wrote me off immediately. So I think this is going to be really interesting to see if we can find common ground and find out where our hearts lie with a lot of these wrestlers.
Yeah, so we're going to debate this and put it together, and everyone loves these tier systems these days. So the categories are trash, not at full potential, good but not great, great, and GOATs, the greatest of all time. So let's run through the options because these are limited options. We're not doing free reign. We're only going to go with this weird selection that's here. So down here, we've got Seth Rollins, the Great Khali, Bret Hart, Triple H, RVD, Chris Jericho, The Big Show, Ric Flair. So far, it's a kind of good lineup. AJ Styles, Kevin Nash, Alberto Del Rio, Steve Austin, the weirdest choice, Baron Corbin. Why is he an option? Hulk Hogan, Roddy Piper, Batista, Randy Orton, Kurt Angle, Kane, Brock Lesnar, Kane again.
Unmasked Kane.
Didn't even realize there were two Kanes. John Cena, Edge, Daniel Bryan, The Rock, Rey Mysterio, CM Punk, John Moxley, The Undertaker, and Mick Foley. Weird selection. We're missing some obvious ones. No Randy Savage, no Shawn Michaels. But we got to do with what we've got.
I kind of like, obviously we need to point out, this isn't our choice, our choice of wrestlers. This is just what was put on this page to go with. So, look, there would have been a whole bunch in there that I would have added, obviously. Some I wouldn't have had on there. But I think the best part about it is all of these wrestlers, you have debate as to, obviously, except for a couple, no one's going to put Stone Cold in the trash. But anyone that puts Stone Cold in the trash, in my opinion, is an idiot and doesn't know what they're talking about. But I'm going to make some choices where people will say you're an idiot for putting that person in the trash. That's the best part about this list. Most of these wrestlers could go, depending on your argument, anywhere on this list.
All right. Well, how do we want to do it? Do we want to start from the bottom? Start with the trash pile?
I thought about we could just go left or right and then select them and put them where we want to go.
All right, cool. That's interesting. So let's start with Seth Rollins. Monday Night Messiah, the Man, the Architect. He's had a lot of nicknames. He's won so many world titles already. Where do you put him?
At this point, we're taking these wrestlers as to where they are right now. So there's going to be some choices which change. Seth Rollins 3 years ago, I would have said, great. Okay. Undeniably great. At the moment, I'd be saying he's not at his full potential.
Interesting. Because as time goes on, his career gets longer, and how many years of it do you say are great? How many aren't great?
See, I would have said I'd put 2 of his years as great. He had a couple of years there where it was pretty much since his Mania win, his surprise Mania win from then on for a couple of years was pretty great.
2015 and
just
2016, I remember saying to friends and publicly, I was like, he's on track to have a Shawn Michaels type career. Then an injury, and then, he's
Lynch,
recovering.
and then Becky Lynch happened.
He's recovering a little bit. I really like the Monday Night Messiah stuff. Say what you will about eye for an eye, but yeah.
See, that eye for an eye and the vomit thing at the moment puts him, to me, in, I'd like to have him in good but not great.
Oh, okay. You know, Vince McMahon would put him in great for puking on camera, though. That's all he ever wanted from draws. Exactly.
That is great shit.
He's gonna puke.
But what would your argument be for him being great?
Championships. He was the first ever NXT champion. Carried the Shield. You know, in some people's eyes, he was like the workhorse. He ended up being great at promos as a heel when he joined the Authority. To me, it's iffy.
Those Shield years, yeah.
It's iffy after that, though, like really, really after the Authority stuff. I think where they fumbled, or where he may have fumbled for different reasons, obviously the feuds with Brock Lesnar and then The Fiend, with the crowd not taking to him, which was, he was put in a bad spot because the crowd didn't take to Roman Reigns. So the argument should have seen that, no, we want Seth. And then it was like, no, we don't want Seth either. So I don't know, maybe, but in ring, he's about as good as it gets as at the modern style. I don't know, maybe good, not great is the right spot though.
Yeah. Look, I think there's there is a potential. He's 2 matches away from getting in great for me. Like a lot of these wrestlers they're 2 really great matches away from going from good to great. Because like there's a lot of them where you just like, see Rey Mysterio at the moment, I'd say his last year puts him down the list because I've just gone, it's been a bit of a joke in my eyes.
But
they haven't used him properly. Overall, that's the point. So you're like, well, it's where they sit at the moment. I think Rey Mysterio is one of those ones. He's suffered because of the writing, not necessarily of who he is as a wrestler. So with Seth Rollins, if we're going wrestler, he's great. But if it's character, good but not great.
Oh, okay. He's in good but not great, but because of his age and how much he has left in the tank, this is only here because of what's happened now. I feel like in 10 years, we might move Seth up to great or GOAT.
I think you're exactly right. But let's say, we did say at the start, it's as of right now.
As of right now. Okay. Sorry, Seth.
Good, not great.
All right. Up next, the Great Khali. Does that put him in great by proxy?
Go straight away. Look, if any, like to me, straight away, trash. Great Khali, he was never anything other than, look, the Punjabi prison match. Oh, I love that shit. But he was just this big dude who did these huge, big waving arms down to the ring. The thing that puts him in the trash for me is he eliminated himself from the goddamn Royal Rumble.
he did too.
Over the rope, and everyone just went, "Oh, hang on." And I don't think that was written in. I thought he's just forgotten the rules here. He just walked out of the ring.
He was truly terrible at everything. My favorite Khali moment though was they booked him as a monster. He came in, he looked jacked up, he was huge. He feuded with The Undertaker.
Against The Undertaker.
And beat The Undertaker with the chop, beat him fairly. But then, when it didn't work after a few months and The Undertaker made his return at the Royal Rumble, beats everyone up, faces off with Khali. Khali chops him, but then Taker no-sells it, sits up, gets up, fucking eliminates it. For some reason, that was so satisfying. It was like, bloody Khali.
He had the biggest potential. Look, he could be not at full potential because he could have been one of the best ever because he's the tallest ever, surely in WWE.
Gotta be taller than Giant Gonzalez. He was huge.
Tallest by a mile, I think, right? Look at him. He was taller than the Big Show. He was taller than everyone. It just made everyone look tiny. And at the end of it, he was dancing in the ring with bloody Scotty 2 Hotty and shit. So, absolute trash.
I did meet him once at an autograph signing at WrestleMania 23. His hand, I swear, I'm holding it up on camera, is like bigger than my head.
Yeah.
And what was crazy, on TV, obviously he wouldn't speak English. He did speak English. He spoke to all of us in line. He was like, "Hey, brother, how's it going?" And I was like, "All right, cool." Seemed like a nice guy. It was weird.
What up, peanut? Is he bigger than Andre the Giant?
100% has to be taller. He would have been. Yep, I reckon.
That's a Google one. I'm going to Google that quickly because I think like how tall was Andre?
Andre, from what I've heard, was a legit 7 foot, but obviously they inflated it to 7'3".
They would have said he was at 8 foot or something.
Yeah,
it says he was 2.24. Here we go. Build height 7'4".
Yeah, build height.
Yeah, which I think is probably bullshit. And here we go. Build height for the Great Khali 7'1".
Ooh.
So it said he was 2.16 in real life. And so, yeah, Andre was taller. Andre was 2.24.
Interesting. Okay, well, we'll take their word for it.
Wow.
Who are we to doubt?
Yeah, but he was probably... I think Andre was probably taller because really, you look at him against anyone and he was ridiculously tall.
Is massive. Well, there's the Great Khali. That was an easy one. Here's a controversial one. Bret the Hitman Hart. Trash. No.
I put him right next to Seth Rollins. I thought that if Bret stays at WWE, GOAT, but in my opinion, everything that happened with him in WCW puts him at good but not great.
Oh, that's rough. I'd still put him at great. But then again, that's the end, like 1 month of 97, but then all of 98 and all of 99. That's 2 years of his career where he did nothing of note. Watching those Nitros and pay-per-views back, his matches aren't even that good. Like, it's so weird to say. He wasn't physically past his prime. He seemed fit, but the matches were just...
He wasn't in it. And to me, that puts him at good but not great because he's held at such a high regard for what happened in his career in WWF at the time, right? Which is completely fair enough. If we strip away everything that happened in WCW, he goes in the GOAT. Simple as that. But we did say at the start, it's what happened as of right now.
Whole career.
Whole career. He wasn't great in WCW at all. So I can't put him, for me, I wouldn't say GOAT at all.
Well, if we want to count all time, do we also count his terrible match with Vince McMahon at WrestleMania and that weird run as GM and the time he beat The Miz for the US title for a week?
Or now when he's on Cameo and he just looks 95 years old and it's embarrassing. Have you seen any of those? He's just like, hey, Bret Hart here, Hitman. You're like, oh no, someone stop.
Yeah, Bret's a tricky one out of character or off camera. I feel like we should still say great because I feel like most people say he's a GOAT, but I feel it's harsh putting him in good but not great.
Yeah. Look, I'm happy I'd say in between. I'd say great, half of his career great.
Oh, like most of his career though. Like,
I wouldn't say WCW was great. I really wouldn't.
I know,
because
but
he's not notable in WCW.
It's 2 years out of a 30-year career though. I feel like we can excuse it. I think.
Yeah. All right, I'm sticking with no GOAT.
Because remember, most people would say he's GOAT, but if we're going to knock it down, we can only knock it down to great though, which is still controversial. Yeah. We would get heat for that.
Oh, we'll get heat for that for sure, but that's why I like it.
Yeah, well, look, I'm a Shawn Michaels guy, like, unashamedly. If he was on this list, Shawn would be GOAT and Bret would be great. So, personal preference.
That's a talking point. That's a big talking point.
Shawn over Bret because of the second peak of his career.
Oh, I agree with you. Like, that's a good talking point.
When people say Bret's better, nah. I never saw, like, I know Bret had the ladder matches in Stampede Wrestling and he's whinged about it ever since, but I've seen Shawn Michaels have great straight wrestling matches, tag team matches, Hell in a Cell, ladder, Elimination Chamber, blah, 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 blah. Like, he can do every
just those Undertaker WrestleMania matches put him to go straight away for me. Because those were some of my favorite matches of all time.
Yeah. I was there live for the one at 25. It's the best match I've ever seen. So, like, I've never seen people react to a wrestling match like it was a real sport, except that match.
Yeah.
People were losing their minds. Yeah. It was
that's what it felt like, eh? It felt like a real match. They're like, your disbelief just completely went, you're like, this is genuinely, he wants this more than anything. And you're like, you forget about how wrestling actually is. You're like, this is as good as wrestling gets.
during some of the near falls, people were leaving the chairs and going into like the side aisle bits to like watch the fall. And they were like, oh, like holding their heads, and security was like, get back to your seats. Like it was wild. Another controversial one. This is a tough one. I think people would make arguments to have Triple H in any of these categories for different reasons based on their bias. Triple H, he might be the toughest one to place.
He's easily, I think the list gets so much easier after we settle on where he goes.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you start.
Okay. My argument for Triple H, I go back and forth on him all the time. I think he's great as a spokesperson, as a figurehead for WWE. He's so cool, and anytime you see him do media stuff, he's great. Great ambassador for wrestling, so even-tempered. He knows how to handle every situation. That's why he's the game. Great promo. Like, I know there was a stereotype for years, he talks for so long and he goes, gamer, and, the exaggerated way he speaks. One of the best talkers of all time. And it always feels like if you were going off the cuff with any wrestler in an insult battle, it always feels like that Triple H would probably destroy you. He seems to have one of the best, like, off-the-cuff wits out of any wrestler. He seems so good in any situation.
Him and Austin were the two where if you went at them, you're going to lose. You're going to lose 100%. That's why when those two were together, there was just, like, no one could hold it. Like, the reason they put The Undertaker and Kane against Stone Cold and Triple H was because you're like, well, this isn't going to be a conversation. Kane's not going to say anything, and Taker's just going to use his bloody brute force to dominate, and that's it. So they're the only two you could really put against those guys and make it a fair fight.
Yeah, and I think for Triple H, sort of underrated or overlooked because of how long his career has gone with him as the game sort of persona. But he had a whole different life as the leader of DX, showing a different personality. And then prior to that as well, with the, Greenwich Blue Blood character, he's played 3 pretty different characters, gotten mileage out of all of them. So that's the character part. Undeniable, Triple H is an amazing performer. You can even prove it with ratings in 2000. But then in ring is where it gets tricky because everyone's got different opinions on how entertaining he is as a wrestler.
And then you've got NXT after that too. Yeah. Which is just, if again, we're going by whole career, he is NXT. He set this whole thing up, him and Shawn Michaels. So you've got to look at that, and what NXT has brought to the table is like, would WWE be as successful now if it wasn't for NXT? Would they look at what that's been able to bring to the table? Survivor Series last year was saved by NXT coming in there and making it so interesting. So that all comes down to Triple H. So to me, I think my list had him completely different, but I'd put him, I'd say he's got to be up there with Great.
Yeah, I think Great is fair for Triple H because a lot of people will say, okay, Rock and Austin were the most famous. Triple H was just a step under them.
And that step under is Great. So
Great.
Yeah, and I think if it wasn't for, there's been a lot of matches that Triple H has had where you're like, it's been lackluster, or he's been put in it where it should have been someone else, which I think was CM Punk's point a lot of the time. Triple H put himself into positions over other people, and he was able to write himself in, or he had that connection, obviously, that Stephanie connection, where he was able to be put into positions where it should have been somebody else. That's the only thing where I'm like, look at the WrestleMania 17 match with The Undertaker. Probably should have been somebody else because that match wasn't as good as what I think a lot of other wrestlers could have done in that spot.
Really? That's a hot take. I love that match.
It's a great match, but I think a lot of other wrestlers could have been put in that position over Triple H.
Okay. I think there's other matches that are a similar situation with Triple H, and I think that stops him from being in the GOAT category.
Yeah.
His main event with Chris Jericho at WrestleMania 18, that shouldn't have been the main event. The main event with Roman Reigns at WrestleMania in Dallas shouldn't have been the main event. He's had a couple of just, for whatever, timing, not the right story, where he's been in that position. So that knocks him down from being a GOAT for me. And also the year 2003, he's recovering from injury, comes back and does Evolution. I know the Reign of Terror. He shouldn't have beat certain people, Booker T, RVD, Kane. Everyone has their opinion on those feuds. That knocks him down a little bit.
Yeah, I'd say he goes from GOAT to great, but I'm happy to settle in great.
Yeah, and I think he should be great. If you put him anything under than that, you're just being, a stereotype of the worst type of fan. So don't do that.
Yeah, Triple H is no good. Where you look at how many titles that man held. You can't be that good. You can't be anything below a great and hold that many titles. Except I'm probably going to go back on myself in about 8 or 9 picks time. Okay. I'm going to take that back because there's a man in yellow there that's going to cop it pretty hard.
No. Okay, we'll get to that. Up next, Rob Van Dam. I think you're a bigger RVD fan than I am. So you go first. Where would you put him?
I think you take RVD's work in ECW. I can't make that argument because we're saying at the end of his career. I'd put him in not at full potential because RVD could have been a lot greater than what he was just with his talent alone. He had an absolute metric ton of talent going. This man has it all. His matches with Jeff Hardy back in the day, just after Invasion, some of my favorite matches because those two could just go head to head and make it look so realistic. But he never did succeed. And then after his run in WWE, what is there? Like, he's in Impact at the moment, yeah?
Yeah, and he had done that years ago too. He did Impact, then went back to WWE for a little bit, and then, yeah.
So I'd be looking more at the not at full potential, which breaks my heart because the guy's awesome. His Frog Splash is up there with the greatest of all time. Him and Eddie's Frog Splash, pretty much on par in my books. He did a lot of pretty cool shit, especially when it came to ECW. But yeah, I'd say not at full potential.
I think that's fair. And not at full potential doesn't mean he's not good or he's not great. It means he didn't live up to the potential for different reasons. For me, when he jumped to WWE, that first year during the Invasion, he should have got more of a chance. He main evented a pay-per-view with Kurt Angle and Steve Austin. People forget that. I think it's No Mercy. But anyway, he ends up being in the triple threat for the title because he got over so quick. But then he slips back down to the mid-card for years, and then he gets injured. Then he comes back. ECW's relaunched. He gets a shot at the belt. Then he gets busted for pot with Sabu, gets the title stripped, never gets another shot again. He had 2 chances to peak and sort of lost them both for different reasons. And it's a shame. So, yeah, not at full potential.
Look, he probably got the 2nd or 3rd biggest pop of all time when he beat Cena for the title. That I remember watching that and going, Jesus, that's like up there with Mankind's win. Mankind, I think, has the biggest pop of all time over The Rock. That was just unbelievable, that win. But then RVD's is pretty close behind that because it was a fully hostile ECW crowd. Nobody wanted Cena to have that belt. And to have that pop, I guess it could have been, making that argument, it could have been anyone. Anyone beats Cena that night, and that pop is ridiculous.
But it was that crowd, those circumstances. Yeah. I think not at full potential is right for RVD.
Yeah, we'll stick there.
Yeah. Next up, Chris Jericho.
Go.
And that's
No
argument. No argument.
No.
To me, if you asked me this in 2002, I would have said no chance because even at that time, so many people were like, Jericho's the best. He's better than Bret and Shawn and Ric Flair. He's so good. I never got it with Jericho. I always thought he was really good, but I always thought, nah, he's not as good as they say yet. But with time, no wrestler has proven how good they are better than Chris Jericho. He continuously adds and changes the character, keeps having great feuds, not just great matches, great feuds. You can count Jericho feuds of the past 10 years and they're as good as anything anyone's ever done.
Yep.
Comes up with catchphrases like they're going out of style. He's a freak.
As probably in the last 2 years has sold more merch than anyone on the planet. Everything that he's done like, I'll be honest with you, when his last little run in WWE, the whole list thing, I didn't love it. It wasn't great. I think, but again, he pointed that out that it was shitty writing. It was exactly what he said. He goes, it's shitty writing, and it was outdated and everything. So I was like, and then, so what did he do? He just played on it and made it better. And I think the last 2 years alone puts him in the GOAT category because he is just brilliant in what he does.
But you could say that about him for 10 years. Like the last 10 years, he could have retired at any point and you'd be like, yep, he's one of the best ever. He started hitting his peak when he cut his hair, when he turned heel after that comeback from WWE, when he threw Shawn into the Titantron or whatever, the Geritron 2000. From then on, all the reinventions he's done since then, it's undeniable. You're like, well, this guy's brilliant. And even the list, what started off as this dumb joke, he turned into the best storyline on Raw.
Yeah.
What he does.
There's no debate whatsoever that he goes anywhere else other than GOAT.
Yeah, and I know he talks himself up. He's that kind of guy. But I absolutely agree that his feud with Shawn Michaels, that 6-month-long feud, is one of the best feuds of all time. The matches, the story, the promos, everything, that could have sealed it back then, and that was 10 years ago. So,
yeah, absolutely.
One of the GOATs. Up next,
Easy.
Big Show. I'm going to say
Trash.
not at full potential. Trash. I'm going to give him credit and say not at full potential.
I genuinely believe trash because
wow.
Here's the thing about the Big Show. How many world titles did he win? 2?
A few.
I think
one, two,
at
least 3. At least 3 in WWE and one in WCW and ECW.
Okay, let's go 3. Who did he beat? With any of them?
He won a triple threat for the first one. And I'm only saying I remember it because it's one of my least favorite pay-per-views ever. Survivor Series, he takes Steve Austin's spot, and I think it's Big Show, Triple H, and The Rock, and Big Show wins the title. Because they were like, let's just hotshot it. And no one cared. One of the worst things ever.
Exactly. I think there's only one time I can ever remember the Big Show getting a big pop, and it was him and Brock Lesnar when they broke the ring. That's it.
Oh, huge.
That's
yeah.
The only memorable thing for me with the Big Show, and the only time I've ever been excited with him being in the ring, and I know it's harsh, but that's what we're doing with this list, was that moment where he suplexed or he got suplexed.
Yeah.
Yeah. He got suplexed. They broke the ring. That was like the biggest holy shit moment. It's been on 100 lists on YouTube of all times. But other than that, man, it's just whenever he comes out, I'm like, yep. Okay, here's a Big Show. He's a big dude. He's a big dude. That's it.
Yeah.
I think what brings him down even further is he was in at the same time as Kane, and Kane was the big red machine. He was produced as the big guy, right? And him and the Big Show had some good feuds, but he never really sold me as he should have been really dominant. The Big Show should have been in this kind of character where you could never beat him ever. He should have been as a Brock Lesnar kind of thing, where
like Andre or Brock
guy.
Lesnar, but no, he was just another guy for most of the run.
He was beatable. Like Rey Mysterio beat the Big Show. How the hell does that happen? Like it doesn't matter how quick Rey Mysterio is; it's the Big Show. Like so that's why for me he goes right next to Great Khali because I'm not sold on him.
But he had the potential. When he jumped to WWE, Vince McMahon said, I'm going to make you a star. They didn't know how to use you. I do. So the potential, everyone thought he had it. And also, he is good on the mic. He's a good actor. Like, he's better than most, especially who have come after him. Like, he's very talented in a lot of ways and a good athlete for his size. Like, you can't deny that. Like, he can do some stuff. He's not the Great Khali. That's why I say not at full potential. I think he could have been even better.
Okay, yeah, I think that point you're kind of right. Is like he actually did have skill. Great Khali didn't have much skill. I never saw Great Khali do a suplex. Like it was always just big chop, and that was it. Like,
come on, Big Show tried doing kick ups and elbow drops off the top rope. He always gave the effort, but it always felt like there was more. He just never reached it.
Okay, I'll stick it not full potential.
Okay, up next. Ric Flair, GOAT?
Oh,
Great.
yeah. No, yeah. Look, it's Ric Flair. You kind of have to go. Everything he did in WCW was great. He was a GOAT in WCW.
Yeah. Well, he had
Simple
a
as that.
few bad years when the NWO came in. He didn't feel like a big deal, but
Everyone had a few bad years when the NWO came in.
I think Ric
Everyone.
Flair actually benefited from going to WWE and being a manager, being a part-timer.
Yep.
They rebuilt the image. WCW, those last few years, he'll even tell you, he didn't feel like Ric Flair. They never made him out to be a big deal. For me as a kid, I remember watching Nitro and hating Ric Flair because I didn't get it. I'm like, who's this old guy? But then in WWE, they made him a big deal again, and he seemed cool and important.
There was a doco on Triple H where he was talking about that, where when he came to WWE and Triple H was kind of organizing what Evolution was going to be, he said that Ric Flair he'd lost his mojo pretty much, and he was a shell of a man. He wasn't anywhere near of what he used to be. And then Triple H helped him get back to who he was. And those Evolution years, amazing. His match with Shawn Michaels when he finished up, absolutely incredible. So even though he was this old guy, you never believed he was anywhere near retiring ever. And then look at his daughter. He's a big part of why Charlotte Flair's so good. Because, obviously he was the catalyst to help her be the wrestler who she is. So he has to go in GOATs, really.
Yeah, and I purposely switched the photos. So for anyone watching this, I've got Ric Flair directly above Bret Hart because I know that would annoy Bret and Bret's fans so much. Because boy, does he hate Ric Flair. To me, they make arguments about each other that are so similar. Oh, you do the same thing in every match. Oh, this and that. No, come on. Bret's very good, but Ric Flair is Ric Flair.
Absolutely.
And you know what? You can even make the argument Ric Flair goes in GOAT because he could also cut better promos than Triple H or Bret. And I'm sure they would even tell you that.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Yeah. You can't, it's Ric Flair.
It's Ric Flair.
Come on. It's when we look back on this at the end, you look at that GOATs list and go, it's The Rock. It's Austin. It's these kind of things. You have to have them as the GOATs. You can't, Ric Flair, if he were to put him anywhere below that, there's so many arguments as to why we're wrong.
Yeah.
As opposed to why he has to be as the GOAT. So, yeah.
We'll stick to that. So up next,
here's
AJ
where we're
Styles.
going to disagree.
Where do you think? I'll let you go first. AJ Styles, the phenomenal one.
I'd put him in trash because I don't like this guy. No. But I can't do that. And we're never going to settle on me putting him in the trash. And when I sent you that one, I really don't like AJ Styles. I never have. I thought that his title run was too long. It wasn't. It was too long, and I was never excited by what he was doing. I'm happy to put him right next to Seth Rollins and say good but not great because I don't think he deserves anywhere near the great and GOAT category. Anywhere near.
Okay, if you asked me about AJ Styles at the end of his TNA run, I would say not at full potential because it always felt he didn't do what he really could have. But then he went to New Japan and became a better character, got a new edge, put on great matches. I think if anything, he was sort of struggling at the end of his TNA run. It didn't feel the same, and he regained that in New Japan. Goes to WWE, becomes a bigger deal than anyone thought he ever would have, becomes one of the faces of the company. He's been a main eventer for most of his run in the WWE, cuts great promos, which has always been an underrated part of his game.
Yep.
For me, where AJ Styles, where maybe you could have argued for him being GOAT, where it falls down, is the past 2 years, it feels like he's been off a little bit. He's getting it back. Maybe it was injuries, because I know he took time off to get surgery. But it feels like for a couple of years, he wasn't as good as he was when he first came into WWE. He came in, 2016? And let's say from 2018 to now, it hasn't felt the same. Something's off.
His initial 2-year run, brilliant. He showed what he could do, and he was great. The last 2 years, I have not been excited by one of his matches except for at Mania. And I don't think that was him pushing it I don't think I was excited by him at Mania either. I thought it was all Taker doing it brilliantly. He did sell it. He was amazing at selling it, and he did do a great job. But yeah, for me, I'd say I would never put him anywhere above good at the moment because I'm just not sold.
Yeah. I don't know.
How do you put him next to Triple H?
The thing that would let him down is you could say, well, he hasn't affected the business in the same ways that Triple H or Brett or Jericho or Ric Flair have. So that would mean you can't put him in that category. You know, did he alter business in terms of money as much as any of those guys did? Maybe not. Was he as big of a draw overseas like Brett was? Probably not. He's a huge star, big deal, and he's, you know, will be known as a legend, and, you know, he'll be in any Hall of Fame, and in the ring, AJ Styles at his peak or when he's in his prime is untouchable, but maybe good, not great. But then again, you could argue not at full potential. If he jumped to WWE in 2005 and was able to be at that level earlier, would he have been even better? I feel like good but not great is all you could say.
Yeah, I'd say good but not great just by his wrestling. His wrestling alone puts him in good but not great. He's a great wrestler. But anything other than that, also he's a flat earther. So if we put that in there, we say we bring up that good but not great because he believes the earth's flat. But yeah, look.
And yeah, you're right. Who you are as a person is basically part of your gimmick these days. If he's publicly going on his Twitch stream saying he's a bit of a flat earther and he thinks there's some interesting ideas, maybe we can judge him on that.
Yep, I'm happy to judge, as I'm happy to judge a couple of people down the line. But yeah, I'd say good but not great.
Okay. Here, I want to argue this one first. Kevin Nash.
Go ahead.
Great. And that's my personal preference, and I will try and make an argument. I love Kevin Nash.
What are you talking about?
I love Kevin Nash, one of my favorites since I was a kid. But here's the thing. Let's not say it as a wrestler first.
Put him up there for a laugh, please.
Yeah, because as on the mic as a promo, Kevin Nash is awesome. You can't deny that. Dude can talk. Part of the biggest wrestling boom of the past 30 years, you know, him being in part of the NWO, big time matches, big time ratings, merchandise, everything else. Leader of the Wolfpack. Time has been kind to the Wolfpack because of nostalgia. Go back and watch that stuff. Nobody on the roster these days gets a pop like the Wolfpack did. I know it's a bit of a joke because they were like, oh, the other NWO and acted like gangsters. But man, we all love the Wolfpack as kids. They were huge.
Yeah.
What lets Kevin Nash down, though, is that comeback feud with Triple H in 2003 and then the comeback dodgy feud with Punk / Triple H / Del Rio, whatever that bloody thing was. But even some of his TNA stuff was entertaining. The stuff he did with the X Division. Like, to me, Kevin Nash is great because of his personality. Like, if you want to argue him as a wrestler, I can give you a handful of really good matches, but that's about it. But they're very, very good. With Shawn and with Brett, and, you know, and with tagging with Scott Hall probably a couple of times, but not more than that.
Look, if Triple H is in the great, you kind of have to put all of the NWO in the greats, really, because if Scott Hall was in there, I'd argue that Scott Hall goes in the great. So I guess if we're going down that line, then I probably can't talk you down from great to good.
I can say good, and maybe he balances out with guys like Seth and AJ. They might be better in the ring, but Nash is a better personality. Maybe they sort of cancel each other out there.
Yeah, I'd say his personality is great, but his in-ring was good. And therefore, if we're talking people down instead of up, then I'd say I'd be very happy for him to settle in good. He's absolutely at his potential, and in no way is he trash. But that's why I laughed so hard at him being great, because I don't see him as a great wrestler. I see him as a staple. He was absolutely someone who you'd pick in your roster at all times. And so you'd always pick Seth and you'd always pick AJ. So this is that middle of the ground, not great, not GOAT, but absolutely going to be on your roster at any time. That's where he needs to sit.
Yeah. And you know what? If we're judging them as people and like who they are sort of outside of the ring that we see publicly, man, I'd put Kevin Nash as a GOAT though. He's anti-Trump, pro-Black Lives
Yeah.
Matter, you know,
Yeah.
like, yeah, he's pro-choice. Seems like a really woke guy. And I know a lot of people have said it's really weird. People wouldn't have expected that from him. But he's a smart guy. Seems like a really cool guy.
Yeah, look, I'd say this next one's pretty simple. Del Rio, trash.
Trash.
Yeah. Del Rio, like, again, his most memorable thing for me, apart from everyone hated him so much, was when he tried to cash in on CM Punk and got his ass handed to him, and then was a laughing stock from then on.
Yeah.
No good. Trash.
I'm putting him in trash too, based on the stories we've heard of him as a real person the past couple of years, especially lately. Anything other than trash would be too much for this guy. God damn, he sounds terrible. So sorry, Del Rio. Also not sorry.
I'm not sorry.
Not
Trash man.
Yeah.
Next one's relatively easy. Trash.
Go.
No. Austin, obviously the greatest of all time. In my books, the greatest of all time, full stop. No one comes close to Austin, really, in my books. I think that'll be a big debate for a lot of people of where Austin actually stands in terms of everyone else. But look, to me, my most watched WrestleMania ever is WrestleMania 17, and he is the best match of that. He's the best match of most pay-per-views that he's involved with, most Raws, most SmackDowns, pretty much anything you go back and watch that he's on, he's the best thing about it. So, and you can't say that with anyone else, not even close in my book. So I'd say he's the greatest of all time without a doubt.
Yeah, if you want to argue based on different categories and different, metrics of what makes a wrestler great matches, Steve Austin has them. Was he a great technician pre-injury? Absolutely he was. Great tag team? Yep. Him and Pillman, the Hollywood Blondes were awesome. Him and Shawn were awesome. Him and Foley were awesome. Him and Triple H were awesome.
Triple H were awesome.
He could do tags. Could he talk? 100%. One of the best promos ever.
Probably the best promos ever.
Probably exactly. You could argue he's probably the best talker ever. Good at segments? Absolutely. He could do comedy. He could do the stunts. He could do anything. Mm-hmm. Did he draw money?
He was a great heel, great face.
Great heel, great face.
Ever.
Most merch ever. Most pay-per-views ever.
People still chant what at every pay-per-view. So,
exactly. Catchphrases.
Yeah.
Catchphrases, he's got them. Merchandise. He designed a lot of his own T-shirt ideas. Was he good at commentary?
Austin 316. That's it.
Put a skull on it. That was it for everything. Yeah. Was he a good commentator? Yeah. Anytime he sat in, he was great too. Was he a good host? Yes. He was awesome as the host at Tough Enough. Anything they get this guy to do, he's good at. As the best all-rounder, Steve Austin is number one. It's hard to argue.
Yeah.
And if you don't think he was a good wrestler, if you were too young to live through the Attitude Era, like you said, he's the best match on every pay-per-view.
Yeah, go back and watch any of the stuff, and it's always good.
There's something about he had a second gear that other people don't have, even though a lot of his style later, because of the injuries, was a lot of brawling. There's just an energy to his matches that you're like, how come other guys aren't like this? It's hard to explain.
Yeah.
But no, he lives up to the hype. Steve Austin is the shit. Up next, Baron Corbin. I'm going to say not at full potential, even though I could argue trash.
Look, to put him in trash would be a bit of too much of a spit against him. I'd say not at full potential, strictly because his promos have been the same thing for 3-4 years now.
He's good at
everyone hates him. He's great. He's a great heel. He really is a great heel. But I'm just bored by Baron Corbin. It's not interesting. To me, that could be a little bit of the writing. I'd say Baron Corbin goes somewhere else, and this could be a completely different conversation. But at the moment, that's why not at full potential by a mile.
And he shows so much glimmers of being a great wrestler too. But obviously he slows it down on purpose because of the role he's playing. He's very good. I wonder if he'd be good as a face. We've never really seen it. He sort of debuted in NXT as a tweener, but we might not see it. I wonder if there's something there that we wouldn't expect that we're like, oh, okay.
Possibly. Yeah, possibly.
Up next, Hulk Hogan. I think we might disagree on this one.
Trash.
Nah, see,
Hulk
to me...
Hogan,
GOAT or great? Hulk Hogan for me.
GOAT or great?
Yeah.
Look.
Have you ever seen anyone work a crowd like Hulk Hogan? Even Austin,
No.
you could argue Hulk Hogan, something about him, the way he knows how to manipulate a crowd, even up to his later days, that's a skill. That's as good as it gets.
But was he a good wrestler?
Well, you could argue his stuff in Japan when he leans on his technical and like brawling side, surprisingly good. He just knew he didn't have to. So then you could argue he was good because he knew what to do to get a reaction. Hulk Hogan's a tricky one. But if we want to argue full career, some of the later stuff isn't good. The outside the ring is definitely not good. Covering up that hit and run for his son and saying maybe the guy deserved it, maybe God said he deserved it. People forget about that because of the other controversies.
I don't forget about that kind of stuff. That's why I'm putting him in trash. But look, I'd say his personal life is trash, but he is one of the GOATs. So personal life knocks him down a tier, and I'd say we have to go great instead of GOAT.
Okay, and what about all of the lies, like when he said he was meant to play bass for Metallica, but he didn't because he was busy wrestling?
That falls in the personal life thing is huge, and it's ridiculous. So
yeah, he's very unlikable. This
was my list. I put him in trash. I don't like the dude, and I thought he was very, very heavily overrated. I genuinely believe he is the most overrated wrestler of all time, in my opinion. But he carried the first 20 years of WWE. So,
and I think where his argument holds up, you could say there's guys similar to him, like Ultimate Warrior or Sid, but those guys would always only have short bursts and burn out. Hulk Hogan was able to do it longer because of his ability to know what the crowd wants and know how much to do. There is something about, and also he's selling. He seemed sympathetic, like he did at WrestleMania 18,
NWO
where he turned the crowd against The Rock, and the NWO, proving that he could do the heel stuff. Like that was a whole different person. But you're right. As a person, it's knocks him down.
Let's hold him at great, because look at the NWO stuff alone. That's when I first started to get into wrestling. I love the NWO. I thought they were brilliant. Everything he did after that, despite personal life stuff, was pretty goddamn good. So let's keep him at great. And
well, see, that's different. So I grew up watching old wrestling tapes with my grandpa. So my first bit of wrestling was all of the Hulk Hogan stuff, like jam packing his whole early career into a few years. So to me, Hulk Hogan was the man. And a lot of those matches, some of them still hold up. Some of them don't, though. As his career goes on, it's harder to watch. But I feel like we're doing him a disservice to not put him any lower than that. Up next, John Moxley. This is a guy who might move up in a few years, but right now, what do we think?
I'd say great, because to me, Moxley has never done anything wrong personally. His last year in WWE wasn't great, but they knew he was out of there, so they didn't give him anything worth it, in my opinion. But you got to look at what he's done now. Where he's at currently is great, and I think he'll move up to GOAT by the end of his career.
Yeah, see, to me, if he was still in WWE, even as good as he was, I'd say not at full potential. You watch some of his indie stuff, the stuff in FCW, and then by the time he got to WWE, it was like, well, this guy is going to be the best. They said he was their secret weapon. The expectations were there. Everyone talked highly of him. And it's weird. He kept overcoming any times it felt like the writing was bad or they weren't using him. He got over first when the Shield broke up. I think people forget that. The crowd liked him the most. He was the unexpected breakout early on, and they never capitalized on it. And they never did that whole WWE run. And then when he came back all jacked up a couple of years ago, like from the injury, we all thought, all right, Moxley, Ambrose is going to get the shot.
Worse for him.
Got even worse with the gas mask and all of that. And
which would have played really well now, but
he was ahead of the curve. I want to say good, but not great. But to me, like I've always thought highly of him. I think he'll end up being great or GOAT eventually. I don't know.
Yeah, I think great, because he really is right now. He is great. Everything he does is great. But, putting him higher than Seth. Yeah. He's better than Seth, in my opinion.
I think on the mic, it's undeniable, and in segments and the way the crowd reacts to him. Yeah, I would put Moxley over Seth.
Great then.
He'd be great. I know
'Cause the
some
next
people
step up
don't
for
like his
Moxley is
wrestling.
GOAT.
I know some people don't like his in-ring stuff.
I love his wrestling. I love his wrestling.
I think it's how it is on purpose. It's exaggerated and it's big, almost in a Hulk Hogan sense. It's so you can see what he's doing. He's not trying to, be all like, And he is a good technical wrestler too. I think that's always been underrated. Maybe he can say great. I think he's going to move up. If he stays the main guy at AEW, he could have
his next step up is GOAT. So
if he's there and AEW continues to grow, then you would have to say he'll be a GOAT because he was one of the building blocks of this new company.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's already leapfrogged the executive vice presidents. John Moxley is a bigger deal than Cody the Bucks and Omega.
By a mile.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll keep that there as sort of a modern controversial one. Up next, CM Punk.
GOAT. Punk. At the end of his career, his last 3 years alone puts him in the GOAT. To me, he's got the best wrestling match of the last 10 years, being that Money in the Bank match. That was unbelievable. And that match in itself puts him at GOAT for me. No other wrestler has been able to come close to doing that. And what he did there just crushes everyone else. So I'd put him right up there next to everyone else.
Then you could almost argue that they didn't capitalize on it the right way. There was a few iffy months, like we said, with Del Rio, with John Laurinaitis, with Del Rio beating him for the belt and then Punk having to get it back. And then Punk never main eventing a pay-per-view when he won the title for a year and a half or whatever it was. It almost feels like, not in a bad way, you could almost say not at full potential. But that's because he should have been undeniably a GOAT, not that he had to work so hard for it. Punk's a weird one.
I think it's not his fault. So therefore, CM Punk as a wrestler, I would put up there as GOAT. Everything would be not his fault, which is not getting the right chances and such, is what made him so good. He still was able to take advantage, even given the position he was in.
True, in spite of all that. And really, the crowd wouldn't have chanted his name for years after retiring if he wasn't.
Exactly.
Yeah, and also, like, as a complete performer, similar to Austin and Jericho, good in the ring, good on the mic, good as a heel, good as a face, good at different characters. He was the man of the people. He had the cult. He did the stuff in Ring of Honor, did the stuff, as a plain baby face in ECW. I think we could say he's a GOAT. Like, really, we're a bit older now. I think people who are 10 years younger than us, CM Punk is on that level. Like, 100% to them, CM Punk would be what Austin is to us.
Yeah. I wouldn't put him any lower than that. I think that'd be a huge disservice to the end of his career and everything. And the fact that he never came back and he's stuck with it, he's never coming back. That in itself is enough to put him up there in that GOAT category. He was good enough to know I don't need to come back here, and I'd never be able to hold a candle to who people even think I am.
Yeah, well, that's
what's the point?
That's true. The legend of CM Punk has grown so much that he can never live up to it, and he would drop a couple of tiers if he did potentially. Oh, he's a bit old. Oh, he's a bit sloppy. Or, I saw this guy in NXT do that better. Like, maybe he can't live up to it. The legend has grown around CM Punk.
Yeah. The people he'd be able to do matches with, like Edge, Orton, and they've overtaken like his wrestling style and everything. So there'd be no point to him coming back, and I hope he does stick with it.
Yeah, well, that keeps him on, in mythical status. Up next, a guy who, if we're just clearly in the ring, is as good as it gets of all time, like consistency. Rey Mysterio is in ring one of the absolute best ever. He's in his 40s and he's still better than 90% of any wrestler you've ever seen.
Look, originally I had him at good but not great, I think. But rethinking more and more again. You're like, well, what's wrong with Rey Mysterio? Like,
I
why
think his
wouldn't he be up
promos
there?
get a little bit either
Yeah.
underrated or overly scrutinized. He's good. He's definitely not a bad talker.
Yeah.
But is he
Look,
great on the mic?
No. But wrestling-wise, I think it'd be a disservice to his wrestling to put him anywhere under great.
Yeah.
Because he's never really had a bad match. He makes everyone else looks better than what they are too, which is a big thing. So I'd say great.
Yeah, I'd say great. And if we were talking strictly in ring, I'd put him as GOAT because, my God, he debuted in '96 in WCW. It's bloody 2020 and is still awesome in the ring.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's fair.
I think personally, the next three are very easy.
Okay, The Rock.
Rock, GOAT.
Yeah, Rock's a weird one. You know, I know some people might argue about his in-ring skill. Those people are wrong, but also, if you wanted to argue about his in-ring skill, everything else he's good at is 10 times better than anyone else, which carries it. But they are wrong. Yeah. They're absolutely wrong.
Yeah, there's no argument there. Him and Austin are on the same page in every kind of book. His mic abilities, wrestling abilities, storylines. Even when he came back and went heel, a lot of people didn't like that. I loved it.
Hollywood Rock was amazing.
Oh, so good.
Fun, yeah.
And who he is as a person now alone is GOAT. So yeah, anything under that.
Yeah, he's sort of grown the legend of The Rock outside of the ring too by becoming the biggest star and the most likable person
in the world.
In the world. He's like, everyone's saying, oh, we want The Rock to run for president. And they're serious. Like, he seems like the world's favorite person.
Yep.
He is the people's champ. And also, in the ring, the people who argue against him being good in the ring, The Rock from 2000 to 2003, like from when he stopped, when he changed his style, got in different shape, The Rock is so bloody good. He could hang with anyone. Jericho, Benoit, Triple H, The Rock was awesome.
Was able to sell better than anyone else in the industry. The matches between him and Lesnar, he made Lesnar look. I'd argue that Lesnar wouldn't be where he is now if it wasn't for The Rock. Because The Rock made him look incredible.
The feud and then the match at SummerSlam with Brock beating him for the belt. It's a great match. And The Rock does so much to make Brock look like a threat and then sell it like this guy is a monster. And what a way to pass the torch.
Yep.
Also, I thought his matches with CM Punk from the comeback were underrated. Those were two good matches. They were old school main events. They were good. Yeah. But anyway.
Daniel Bryan, great for me. I think at the end of his career, GOAT. But for now, I'd say great.
Yeah, Daniel Bryan's a weird one. He's like my favorite wrestler of the past 10 years. I want to say GOAT because he is good at everything. He's another one of those guys, surprisingly, he's good at everything. He can talk, he can be a face, he can do comedy, he can be serious, he can be vicious, great in the ring. Those couple of years of injuries and whatever almost feel like they took away some of the potential. And obviously now he has to take time off because, he's not going to risk it with COVID-19. So he's sort of wrestling on borrowed time right now. Like, how much of this is his prime that we're missing out on? We don't know. So I want to say great, but Daniel Bryan is about as good as it gets in this modern era. Anytime you think it's over for him, you're like, oh yeah, it's Daniel Bryan. We've seen everything he can do. He shocks you, like with the Planet's champion going heel again. And then the feud with...
I thought even that was great too.
Yeah, it was really good. And then turning face again to feud with Bray Wyatt. It was so seamless. You never thought, oh, why is he flipping again? He's Daniel Bryan. He can do that. Up next, a man who made his return to the ring, so this could change things. It's the Rated R superstar, Edge. I'll let you take it first.
I think with the innovation of the TLC matches and what he did for the high-flying kind of extreme attitude. If Jeff Hardy was on this list, I'd be putting Jeff and Edge in the same thing as two of the greats. I think it's very hard to look past Edge, Christian, Dudley's, Hardys as not great, because they were just, I've got a special spot for them all, because that was my upbringing, was on those guys.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, when I started watching wrestling was around the point where they were becoming really, really popular. So, I'd say it's hard for you. Like, I could see some people putting him in good, but I'd say for me, great. And like, look how many title runs he had, the ultimate opportunist, rated R superstar. The evolution of his character alone was something to be held in great regards.
Yeah. Edge is a personal favorite of mine as well. One of my all-time favorites. As a solo, like when he broke away from Christian, and, you know, it might have taken him a while to really get there because of the injury and everything else. But once he started clicking as the rated R superstar, he was consistently one of the, like, absolute best overall performers. Great matches, great promos, good as a heel, good as a face, can do pretty much everything. He was never the top guy, and that's because he was always the main heel, though. So by, you know, default, he was never going to be presented as John Cena or Batista or The Undertaker. They were sort of always, you know, presented just above him. So I'd say great, but really one of the greatest of all time.
Yeah, I wouldn't put him. I wouldn't. The only thing that stops him being as a GOAT is he could potentially go there now, in the last part of his career, and that's what I'd be waiting for, to see where he takes this next step and what he does from there, because that really holds the key to him going up. Same as Daniel Bryan, same as Rey Mysterio. Like, it all comes down to what they do next, really, to push them to that GOAT level.
Yeah, we've had to find, like, real reasons to not put people higher or lower. I think Edge should be there comfortably. Something stops him from being on this GOAT list, even though he is one of the all-time best performers. He might not be there. I guess the thing that separates him from Jericho, Flair, Austin, Punk, and Rock, Edge was never presented as the absolute main guy, which is a shame because he's as good as any of them. So I think that's
and
fair.
His title runs were always, he stole them.
Yeah, he'd steal them and
thing.
they'd be short, and people would need to get them back from him because he was a snake.
And let's be honest, his wrestling repertoire, he's great, but he's not one of the greatest with that. I don't think his in-ring ability is the greatest of all time, but he's definitely great. He's definitely better than most others.
Well, he had a style that fit different people too, because he was bigger than most people who wrestled his style. You know, he's a tall guy, but he was still sort of a high flyer. He was also technical. He could do hardcore. So, yeah, very adaptive. One of the great all-rounders. If we're talking all-rounders, Edge is up there. Very talented.
Yeah.
One of the best. Up next, a controversial one, but I really think John Cena, I'm going to say GOAT. Like, I think with time, it's really hard to argue. I think you're just being a dick if you don't.
Yeah, look, even if you boo the hell out of John Cena every single time you get, you can't go past that. He is not one of the greats. He's like, 15, 16 times he's won the title. The stuff he's done for the Make-A-Wish Foundation alone in itself is like, that says it all to me. That puts him up there with the GOATs. The fact that he's just done more great Make-A-Wish Foundation things than anyone else. You can't knock down his in-ring abilities. He's on the mic. He's fantastic. He makes everyone else look good. He's one of the GOATs for sure.
Yeah, and I know 5 Moves of Doom and people make fun of his wrestling. There's about a 10 to 15 year stretch. If you just took his matches, took the context away from like why you hated him or why you didn't want him to win, John Cena has as many good matches as any wrestler ever. And I know people don't want to hear that. Man, if you just take some of those matches and go rewatch them, he's got so many classics that it's amazing.
The Punk Money in the Bank says it all. That wasn't a 5-star match for one side. That was a 5-star match because both of them absolutely bought it that night.
I think that's what it was, and that was hard to swallow for a lot of fans. But after time, you have to be like, How many? So what? These guys just all happen to carry John Cena to classic matches.
Yeah.
Punk, Bryan, Shawn Michaels, Umaga, like literally everyone. Edge, any good match Cena had. Oh no, they carried him. Did they? They all carried him. He had nothing to do with it. Like, yeah, he's great. And again, on top for 15 years as a ratings draw, pay-per-views, crowds, merchandise, like John Cena. Hard to argue.
Absolutely.
Up next, Masked Kane, trash. Why is he even in there? Oh, sorry, unmasked.
Unmasked. Look, I wouldn't put him in trash because he had some him and Undertaker at WrestleMania 20, great match.
A big
the build
moment.
up there where I thought he had a lot of great matches, but it was pre unmasking Kane. Obviously, is to me great. I think we should probably do these two in one go. I'd say unmasked, definitely not at the full potential compared to what masked Kane was, which I think masked Kane goes down as one of the greats just because everything he did was great. He's not one of the GOATs, I don't think.
No.
There was because of his in-ring abilities wasn't up there with the Undertaker's. Like you look at, they're meant to be, cut from the same cloth, and I don't think you could put Kane up there with the Undertaker. But I'd say not at full potential. Unmasked, great masked.
Yeah, I mean, he unmasked with that feud with Triple H, and they never capitalized on it. He just sort of drifted into a different feud, and and then we saw Kane put the mask back on. So he's had a longer career with the mask. So are we saying good but not great, or great?
I'd say great. Like you can't go past. He had them until recently the most amount of eliminations in a Rumble. He held that for a long time. It'd be hard to argue that you go back to when Kane came into it, the Inferno matches, his early takes with the Undertaker, and even the later stuff too. Amazing, absolutely amazing. And he is like the first big monster in the WWE where you're just like, holy shit, this, as soon as his pyro hit, every time you're excited to see him there. Every single time you had the pyro hit and the music and everything, you're like, sick, this is going to be awesome.
I think his...
Compared to the Big Show, which are...
Teaming up with Daniel Bryan, to me, for Kane, that was like the reason why I'll allow him to be put in great. I think that gave him an extra something near the end of his career. And that helped Daniel Bryan a lot, and it showed how good both of them are at the comedy stuff, and it also did a lot to sort of build Bryan's solo career, for that last run at Cena's title, with Kane telling Bryan, "You're not the weak link," and then going on to do so much good stuff together, so many memorable segments. So and also Kane teaming up with X-Pac during the Attitude Era, that was a really good storyline too. Yeah. I'm a fan of Kane. I think he's very good.
Absolutely.
Up next, Brock Lesnar. Oh, people are split about Brock. What do you think?
GOAT for me. Brock Lesnar is just, to me, the most dominating wrestler of all time. No one can hold a cloth to Brock Lesnar. Every single time he comes to the ring, you're like, he's going to win. And 99.9% of the time he does. Sure, he has short matches, but you know what? He has short matches because of how incredibly good he is. And when he does have to turn it on, early on, his really long matches, like him versus Kurt Angle at Mania, one of my favorite matches. Him in the Rumble last year, you're like, Jesus Christ, this guy's there's no way. Who's going to beat this guy? And then, he only lost that Rumble because they had to set up for Mania in that kind of way. You couldn't have him win it. That wouldn't have made any sense. But yeah, look, to go into that Mania, basically he broke the record for most amount of eliminations, I think, in that Mania. He did it as champion. He's probably going to go down as, between now and when he retires, he'll win it again, probably 5 or 6 more times, and come close to holding the record for most titles. He'll hold every single record by the end of it, and he beats everybody else on this list in a match 1-on-1 99% of the time again. So how could you not have him in the GOAT?
Yeah, Brock Lesnar is an interesting one. He debuted, and within a year, like less than a year, in 6 months, he was world champion, and it never seemed out of place or unearned. You were like, oh yeah, this guy's just the champion now. Became a legit main eventer. That first 2-year run he had justified him being one of the all-time greats, but coming back as a massive mainstream star because of what he did in the UFC and sort of rebuilding his image, and then the way that he's been able to sort of change the style of what a main event looks like, that deserves credit too. You know, for all the times it hasn't worked, it's worked twice as more in being this weird spectacle of a 5-minute match, and you don't know if it's real or what's planned or what's not. He blurs the lines of real and worked and whatever else. And then on top of that, aside from Andre the Giant and The Undertaker, we haven't seen anyone presented or booked this way in WWE. Brock Lesnar is the modern day equivalent. He's an attraction. He is Brock Lesnar. Yeah. He's unlike anyone else on the show. And yeah, one of the all-time greats. And this one is so silly when I see, people criticize his in-ring wrestling or whatever. He's one of the best ever. And most of these people on this list will tell you that, who have been in the ring with him. So yeah. He's awesome. Anytime he turns it on, he is, Maybe his mic skills let him down, but at the same time, he cut some great promos in the UFC. I think that's also part of it. It's on purpose. Don't talk.
And they knew that, so they went, well, sticking with Paul Heyman, and Paul Heyman's one of the GOATs. So it works perfectly. He can go away for 6 months and come back and just be like, holy shit, here we go. He's going to be champion again, and it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, and also what he lacks in literal talking ability, he makes up for in performance, because when Heyman's cutting a promo, Brock is reacting to everything he says and, flexing a certain way or smiling or laughing. Yeah, Brock's awesome.
And when he works one-on-one with someone else, he has that ha-ha attitude. He's like, yeah, and then he just turned and you're like, holy shit.
Yeah, and you believe it, absolutely, when he changes his reactions. So up next, someone tied to Brock Lesnar, Kurt Angle.
Look, it's hard not to put him up there as a GOAT too. Kurt's, he's an Olympic gold medalist, as we know, and we know time and time again. His stuff with Austin, when Austin turned and went kind of weird, and you had the alliance and like all of that kind of stuff, the whole got milk thing, so sick. Very rarely had a bad match. Like, if you look back at Angle's matches, how many of them would you give less than 4 stars to? Like, they're always great. All of his TNA stuff, also great. He basically made that company what it was. Coming back and doing his mic stuff later on, I think lacked a little bit, but I'd say he's one of the GOATs too. Like, how could you put someone like John Cena there, but not Kurt Angle? I think I'd hold those two in very similar regard in terms of in-ring ability. Obviously, he's brilliant. On mic, excellent. Amount of titles. The titles that he won, his first title, remember, I think it was Vengeance or something like that. Getting everyone in the ring, everyone celebrating. One of the all-time great moments. So why wouldn't he be one of the GOATs?
Yeah, Kurt Angle's almost a tricky one because he left, got injured a couple of times, had trouble, and then went to TNA. Does the TNA run sort of take away from it? Because he had a longer TNA run than he did WWE, even though it was really good. He did so much good stuff there.
I think it's one of the ones that doesn't affect it because he was great in it. It's not like he went away and it was shit and then he came back and it was okay. It's like he went away, was equally as good in TNA as he was in WWE, and came back and was pretty good. But because he's been able to hold that character and do so well, again, we look at merch selling. The whole Got Milk thing was insanely good. The fact that the man can do a moonsault off the top of a cage and be an old man, awesome. Definitely one of the GOATs for me.
Yeah, I don't think anyone got as good as quickly as Kurt Angle did. He debuted in 99, and by 2001, everyone agreed that he was one of the best wrestlers ever. Yeah. It's amazing. No one's ever been as good as quick, and even the
he's
injuries
got the best
don't
entrance
stop him.
ever.
You love the
best entrance ever. The whole "You Suck" thing.
It's pretty awesome.
Oh, so good. It's apart from Austin's entrance, it's the most recognizable kind of entrance in all of WWE. You'd think it's like, and you look at all of those guys in the top, all of their entrances within 0.1 of a second of hearing, you know exactly who it is.
Yeah,
and it's so important. And you're like, well, Angles is up there even just for that.
And Kurt Angle, not only did he become a great in-ring wrestler so quick, but a great character and talker really quickly too. You know, for a guy you thought, oh, this clean-cut Olympic guy, really, really funny and serious. He could do pretty much everything too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And yeah, redefined what WWE wrestling looked like in the ring.
Absolutely.
Up next is a really tricky one. I feel like you could reasonably argue Randy Orton to be anywhere on this list. And I know why people would say what they would say. For as much as he's done, and I'm a huge fan of Randy Orton personally, he could almost, even at his age and as much as he's done, it still feels like he's not at his full potential because of how good he is. Not in a knock. This is the guy who it's not a knock. It's almost like it always feels like there's more with Randy Orton.
Yeah, look,
he's not GOAT. I wouldn't say GOAT.
He's not GOAT. He's not good, but not great. He's either great or not at full potential.
I almost feel like not at, yeah.
No, I'd say great because I'd put him in the same realm as Moxley. What happens next is the most important. How he finishes, that's what's going to define him here. If he finishes with a couple of title runs that are just unreal, makes what everyone's tipping is he goes to McIntyre now. And if he has a 6 or 7 month long feud with McIntyre where it's just one of the greats, then he goes to GOAT. If he just fizzles off here and just kicks a bunch of legends in the head until he retires, you're like, well, it's a missed opportunity. So, I'd say it'd be a disservice to how good his career has been. Just going from Evolution till now, it's basically, you can't really talk him down for how good he's actually been. So you'd say it has to be great.
Yeah, and he's always sort of been in the shadow of John Cena, and it always feels like he's a step under the guys who are on the GOAT level.
Yeah.
But what's scary, he's only 40.
Yeah.
He's still got...
That's the whole point.
Potentially 5 years of being the best.
Yep.
You could argue he's doing his best mic work this year. It's weird. He's killing it.
That's not even an argument. That's fact. He is the best he's ever been now, nearly wrestling and on mic wise. And if he's only getting better, you're like, Jesus, what could this guy do from here? He could be face of the company for the next 5 years. You just don't know.
And I think Randy Orton's in-ring style, because we finally got to the point where the indie style became mainstream and every match has flips and dives and whatnot, Randy Orton's matches are now a breath of fresh air because he doesn't do any of that. So his matches stand out even more now. So what used to be considered, the boring WWE style, no, Randy Orton doesn't wrestle like anyone else now. Seth Rollins is the WWE style. That became normal. What he does, what Randy does, no one else does. So when crowds come back, I'd love to see how they're going to react to this new Randy Orton. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets cheered more than booed when crowds return, just because of how cool he is right now.
No doubt. It's the same as even when Austin was a heel, people still cheered him. Even when The Rock was a heel, people still cheered him. Jericho, when he was a heel, well, he is a heel now. People still cheer him. It's because they just love, Brock Lesnar. He's never been the good guy. People still cheer him. They go, yes, you're going to dominate here. That's what Orton is. He is, he's that good, and everything about him, you're just like, you're so fucking cool. You're just cool, and that's the best part about him. So, he's going to be one of the GOATs, but it all depends on what happens next.
I think they missed the boat years ago when he was the leader of Legacy and doing the real full-on Viper stuff, and they turned him face, but they changed the character. He became too sort of nice and plain. I hope they don't make that mistake again, because, I feel like he might be a really popular bad guy right now, and they need to keep his edge because, Randy Orton's killing it.
Keep his edge. That's a good pun. Well done.
Oh, yeah. Well, who knows? There's more left for that feud too, which could redefine both of those guys. Another guy tied to Randy Orton, Batista, a tricky one, I think.
I'd say not at full potential because I was never 100% sold on Batista. I never thought that he was great. I never thought he was a GOAT at all. I never even thought he could have been better than he could have been better than good. I always thought he was just he was in the shadow, obviously, with Triple H, and he held that for ages. Their title matches between Triple H and Batista, I was never sold on those either. I never thought that they were the greatest matches ever.
But the feud was great, though. The lead up to the first match to WrestleMania was huge.
Absolutely. I'm not debating that the feud wasn't great. I thought the match wasn't great. And a lot of their matches weren't that great. So I thought he wasn't used to his full potential. His later year stuff, when he played that kind of up himself asshole, I hated that. I was like, when he left, I was like, yeah, sick. See you later.
He was so good at it.
He was good at it, but I was like, then he said he was leaving, and everyone was like, yep, sick. And nobody missed him, really. Even when he came back, it was like, oh, yeah, this is kind of good. I thought his best stuff was the lead up to the WrestleMania match. When he beat the shit out of Ric Flair and then was like, I have your attention now, Hunter. I was like, oh, yes, that was insanely good.
Yeah, that was some of the best segments we've seen in a couple of years. Where he beat up Ric Flair, the promo he cut from his office, and then the "Give me what I want" promo. Like Batista knows how to be a meme. Yeah, just spitting.
Yeah.
I think
give me what I want. Give me what I want.
Later Batista is really sort of where it clicks for him as a personality. So maybe not at full potential, because I wish he did that earlier. Yeah, maybe he's not at full potential. Not a knock. He's very talented and did a shitload of great stuff, but he could have done more. And even he started clicking when he came back, when everyone hated him at the Rumble, the blue taster. Then he leaned into it and turned heel, but then he was gone a month later. Like, it was so short, that run. When he dropped the mic and did the Queen wave to Triple H, hilarious way to leave. Just like the time before when he quit in the wheelchair. Like, Batista has these great moments and then he disappears. He never capitalizes on it.
I think it came down to, he wanted to have that movie career, and it just unfortunately cut right into his prime in wrestling. Like The Rock left after his prime in wrestling, the perfect time to leave, because The Rock in WWE was never going to be better than when he left.
What else could he do? He had done everything.
Like, exactly. He did everything. Batista hadn't done anywhere near as much as The Rock, but he left at the same time in their career, really. So it was like, well, yeah. And that's why I think not at full potential could move up in past good, but not great for some of these wrestlers.
Yeah.
But, like,
it's obviously not saying they're not good. It's just saying they should have.
Trash is saying they're not good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd say Batista sits at that whole not at full potential for sure.
Okay. Up next, Rowdy Roddy Piper, going old school. I'd say if this is the list, I'd say great but not GOAT, because he was never the main guy and he was never a world champion.
Yeah. I would have said good but not great. I thought he was excellent at what he did, but never being world champion, never having, like, I don't know. It's a hard one. Look, he's definitely one of the greats, so he has to go in great. Yeah. But for me personally, I never latched onto him much of the character, so I would put him in the good. But that's a disservice to everything that he kind of did too.
Yeah, Roddy Piper's a tough one. If he retired in the mid-90s, he would be great, 100%. You could argue GOAT maybe, but his late 90s to later year stuff drags him down a little bit, but I think he should still go in great for the promos alone, and he sort of made up for it. I remember he returned to Raw a couple of times to cut promos with, John Cena or Edge, and they were really good. Like, he did a couple of good ones later on, and he had the memorable one at WrestleMania 21 with Austin and Carlito. Like, he showed glimpses of still having it, but some of that later WCW stuff is pretty terrible.
Yeah. Definitely. There's a sneaky thing I would have put him at not at full potential too. That to me, I'd probably put him more in that list than great, because putting him next to Batista, that seems like a similar kind of thing. Is he could have been one of the greatest of all time, but wasn't.
You could almost say that. What's interesting with Roddy Piper, some people might not know, he actually retired in 1987, which is wild to think. He retired at WrestleMania 3. He has a retirement match and he loses because he wanted to go to Hollywood like Batista. And he returns to wrestling a few years later, maybe not the same, maybe not fully committed. So if he hung around, would he have main evented a WrestleMania with Hulk Hogan a couple of years later again? He might have.
So, yeah, I'd be more inclined to put him in Not at Full Potential, because that's exactly where he was.
Yeah, I think he did himself a disservice because he comes back to WWF as an announcer and then only gets in the ring every now and then. Doesn't decide to become a wrestler again fully until WCW, but by then he's got a fake hip and the matches are terrible.
Yeah, so Not at Full Potential for sure then, I reckon.
It's an interesting argument for him. Up next, The Undertaker.
Easy. Go.
Go?
Sorry.
Do the past couple of years hurt him though?
No.
The last ride years?
After the document, look, before the documentary came out, I maybe would have thought maybe gets a bump down. But after the doco, it gives a huge insight into why he is like he is. You can't go 21-0 at WrestleMania and not be the greatest of all time.
Yeah, and a mainstay through like 4 different eras of wrestling and somehow relevant.
Everyone knows who The Undertaker is. Even if you're not a wrestling fan, you still know who The Undertaker is.
He did sort of become one of the most mainstream wrestlers. Like, even if he was never, like Hulk Hogan was always there, Steve Austin was always there, John Cena was always there, but you still like knew The Undertaker.
Yeah.
That's true. My parents know who The Undertaker is. But they probably don't know most of these people on the list.
Yeah. I think my dad knows who Stone Cold and The Undertaker was. And like that, they were my 2 favorites as a kid. So it's like, it's, you can't, it'd be a huge disservice to The Undertaker to say you're not one of the greatest of all time, because everything that he did for the company, like he was one of the ones that basically kept WWE going. Like even in like, there was a thing in the documentary saying, you know, it's, Vince has got the whole break glass in case of emergency, and that was him. Like he was brought back when things were like not looking great. So yeah, I'd say he's definitely one of the GOATs.
Yeah, and I think it's sort of overlooked how important he was in the Attitude Era. His feud with Steve Austin basically went through 98 and 99. They traded the title. You know, Undertaker turned into the ministry guy. And some of their matches and segments are some of the biggest pay-per-views or TV ratings in history. So you can't give credit all to Austin or Vince. Taker was there. He was a big part of it. So, yeah, one of the GOATs. Hopefully he calls it a day now and we can leave him there.
Yeah.
Up next, Mick Foley, lucky last on the list, Mick Foley.
Look, can you fault Mick Foley?
Not really. It's interesting with Foley because I know people might say, oh, he's just a hardcore wrestler. He's a good wrestler even without weapons. He could have a good match.
He wasn't, though. That's the thing. I think Foley is one of the greatest of all time because he proves that you don't have to look like The Rock to be a great wrestler. He proves you don't have to be the best. You don't have to be the smartest. You don't have to be any of this kind of stuff. All you have to be is someone that just gets back up and just keeps on going. Like, you look at that Hell in a Cell match, and for me, that alone puts him at one of the greatest of all time. So many of his matches, him against Triple H at the Rumble, all of his stuff early on, like all of his like thing with a thumbtack, right? Unreal, like that he ever did. All of his general manager role kind of stuff. I love that. Mr. Socko is still one of the greatest things ever. I can't fault Foley ever.
I think Foley also did the right thing by retiring in the year 2000. I know he came back a few times after that. It was never too bad when he came back.
Yeah.
The match with Edge at WrestleMania is a late career classic. So's the one with Randy Orton from Backlash.
Yep.
So the fact that he still had a couple of classics left in him, even the tag match, him and The Rock against Evolution from Mania 20, is very, very good.
Yeah.
Sort of another overlooked late era Mick Foley classic. He's good at everything.
Yeah.
He's good enough at everything to be on the list. One of the biggest stars in wrestling history. Most people know who he is still. He's Mankind. He's Mick Foley.
And you look at bringing the three faces of Foley. It's enough to say, if you didn't have the three faces of Foley, would you have someone around now like Bray Wyatt,
who's
got the ability to change characters and knows he has free run to do it? He's the only person ever to have three different entrants in one Royal Rumble. It's so good. And they weren't like the three faces of Foley. It wasn't like one, like, sure, Dude Love maybe have lacked a little bit in certain areas, but he was still great. Mankind was awesome. Mick Foley in itself, Cactus Jack, like really there was four of them. So they were all great. So he's got 4 entries. I'd probably put Dude Love as good but not great. Cactus Jack is a GOAT. Mick Foley is a GOAT. And Mankind is a GOAT. Like, it was just, everything he did was awesome. So how could you possibly not consider him a GOAT?
Yeah, and if we're talking straight up promos, he's as good as anyone on the list, one of the best ever. As a heel and a face. And that's really important too. Comedy, serious, heel, face, everything. Yeah, I think Foley can be a GOAT for sure because of overall impact. And that's a pretty good list. Controversial, I'm sure not everyone will agree. But there we go. So in the trash pile, we've got Del Rio and the Great Khali. Not at full potential. RVD, The Big Show, Baron Corbin, No Mask Kane, Batista, Roddy Piper, good but not great. Rollins, AJ, Kevin Nash, great. Triple H, Brett, Hogan, Moxley, Ray, Daniel Bryan, Edge, Kane, Randy Orton, and the GOATs. This is the one that matters. Chris Jericho, Ric Flair, Steve Austin, CM Punk, The Rock, John Cena, Brock Lesnar, Kurt Angle, The Undertaker, and Mick Foley. It's pretty good. That's
a pretty good list.
It's a good list.
There's going to be people that debate it, and obviously we want to hear about everyone that debates it. I think it'd be a good idea. Comment your list below, share it, do all these kind of things, because, we want to see what everyone else thinks for sure.
Yeah, and obviously this list is missing out some massive stars, but that's what makes it fun. We're using this weird person's list that they had made up, and I think we've made the best of a bad situation. So there it is. Our list of the greatest WWE wrestlers of all time. Neil, this has been a fun one. And I guess we'll be back to business on the next episode talking about things that actually happened this week. But this was a good diversion, I think.
Absolutely. Well, look forward to some more wrestling next week.
All right. Well, share your list with us. Subscribe to the podcast. And if you're only listening, check out the video. It's on Facebook too. And we'll catch you next week.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.